working for you on RTV6. From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. A lot to get to today, including the latest on the investigation into possible Russian interference in the election, plus the delayed tax reform plan and the latest on a confusing and chaotic year for open enrollment on the marketplace. But first, U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is making a stop in Indianapolis. He's scheduled to meet with Reverend Charles Harrison and members of the 10-Point Coalition tomorrow. Sessions plans to discuss what the DOJ considers a proven model for reducing urban youth gun violence in neighborhoods. The visit comes a few weeks after the Senate Judiciary Committee grilled Sessions on Russia. He told the panel he has not been interviewed as part of the investigation into interference in the election. Moving to that investigation and bombshell developments this past week with the indictments of a few of President Trump's former campaign associates. The president's former campaign chairman will remain on house arrest at least through the end of the day. A federal judge has ordered home confinement for Paul Manafort and his business associate Rick Gates. A bond hearing is scheduled for tomorrow to revisit the status of both men. They face 12 counts, including conspiracy against the United States, conspiracy to launder money, and making false statements. A former Trump campaign official linked to the Russia investigation by special counsel Robert Mueller is out of the running for a top agriculture post. Sam Clovis withdrew his nomination to be the USDA's chief scientist. He said he did not want to be a distraction or a negative influence. It was revealed that he communicated with George Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos admitted to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian intermediaries. Clovis's qualifications to serve in the role had already been called into question. What does the ongoing Russia controversy mean, and what is the impact to the president's agenda? Our Beth Vaughn asked that of ABC News political director Rick Klein in an interview the day after the indictments were handed down.
They're saying that all of it predates the Trump campaign and that this doesn't actually reflect any official actions in the campaign. This was a devastating blow to the narrative that the Trump campaign and the Trump White House has put out, which is to say there were no contacts at all with the Russians, no attempts at collusion. We now know of two separate attempts at potential collusion with Russian agents, including this one that was laid out in the guilty plea yesterday, and the indictments against the former campaign manager and his top deputy. They all suggest that there could have been other actions and other individuals involved. And my sense is that Bob Mueller at the special counsel's office is just getting started.
Moving to health care, open enrollment is underway for the federal health insurance marketplace for 2018 coverage. With the president still working to overhaul the Affordable Care Act, what do people need to know before enrolling, and where does the future of health care stand right now?
I think if you're thinking about enrolling, you have to proceed apace and assume that nothing's going to change, because that's been what's happened so far. We've had President Trump say now that he was going to go back at it after taking on tax reform. The prospects of tax reform are pretty gloomy. So if you're looking at next calendar year, I think it's safe to assume that things aren't going to change in a major way for you. That said, there's so much uncertainty around health care. It's hard to overstate all of the different pieces of this, and including all of the efforts to try to restore the cuts that President Trump is doing, maybe changing some rules around the mandate. All of these things are happening at the same time of the open enrollment period. We know that President Trump has said he wants those markets to fail. But again, I think you come back to the fact that the status quo has been around for a while now, and because they've failed to get rid of this, I think it's likely to stay.
House Republicans' tax reform plan is out, one they hope will lead to the first signature legislative victory for the GOP since the president took office. The initial plan doesn't offer cuts as deep as Trump and some Republicans originally wanted, but Senator Todd Young says he thinks the plan is on the right track. Young says Republicans in the Senate will offer their own tax cut plan soon, one he says will benefit Hoosiers.
Someone who has been on a tax writing committee for a number of years, I've spent time traveling around the state of Indiana. And I know what Hoosiers want us to focus on is making sure that our tax system is fair, simpler, and allows them to keep more of what they earn. And if we focus on that, I don't think we can lose in this effort.
Democrats have criticized the initial tax plan because Republicans passed a budget blueprint that could lead to a much larger deficit in years ahead. But Young says Republicans will move forward on reform, and he's making the long-held Republican argument that economic growth generated by tax cuts will lead to more government revenue.
I think most of the economic growth we can expect from tax reform will occur after 10 years, a 10-year horizon. So you'll be hearing probably from, unfortunately, some of my Democratic colleagues that regardless of what the tax package looks like, that it's fiscally irresponsible. I think we have to account for the economic growth that we know will occur on account of this. When Hoosiers have more money in their pockets, they're able to go out and spend more money. That generates economic growth. It's happened every time we've had a substantial tax reform, so that's why we need to just keep our eye on the ball. It's been 30 years since we've reformed the tax code, and we need a code, according to my constituents, that is fair, that is simpler, and that allows them to keep more of what they earn.
We also asked the senator about the attempt at a bipartisan deal in the Senate to stabilize health insurance markets. It would continue a key component of the Affordable Care Act that Republicans tried to repeal, the federal payments to insurance companies to help offset premiums for low-income Americans. Young says he hasn't made a decision on the compromise bill.
I'm still studying that proposal. I am on the health care committee that has jurisdiction over that. I think we need to continue to debate that. But as I've made really clear, Obamacare is unacceptable. Even Democrats right now are advocating for its replacement with a single-payer European-style system. So they know it's not working as well. Premiums are going up on average next year by 26%. We need to act. I would prefer to go bold and replace the entire system so that it is sustainable and so that it works for every Hoosier.
Enrollment on the health insurance marketplace is expected to drop for 2018 amid confusion, fewer choices on providers and plans, and also higher premiums. I asked Congressman Andre Carson about the impact.
We have a president who has a background in development. I've read most of his books. He's had a successful career. You would think that he would be talking about a public works program, investments in infrastructure, but what does he want to do? He wants to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, and more Americans are saying we want our health care. It's unfortunate.
We're seeing a shorter enrollment period this year. The funding for federal navigators cut by 82% here in Indiana. What's the impact to Hoosiers this go around with fewer choices, higher premiums too?
The wealthiest nation in recorded history should be able to provide our citizens with universal health care, and I think that's the point. Trying to dismantle health care under some austerity guise is unacceptable and unfortunate and embarrassing. I'm encouraging voters to take that frustration out to the polls.
What's at risk?
I think we're going to see infection rates increase. We're going to see more and more people who normally would get checkups. They can't afford to get checkups, so their conditions will worsen or even become exacerbated. I think in many ways you're going to develop a distrust in the system. You're going to develop charlatans who come out and profess to treat folks. It's going to become disastrous, unfortunately.
Are you confident the health care law in the marketplace as it stands right now will be able to meet the needs of the people?
I think we can always do better. When the Affordable Care Act was signed into law, it wasn't perfect. Social Security wasn't perfect. Medicare, Medicaid, they weren't perfect. The idea is to push through monumental pieces of legislation and go back throughout the years and make changes.
Open enrollment on the marketplace is underway. The deadline to sign up for coverage for 2018 is December 15th. A federal lawsuit is accusing Indiana's Secretary of State of violating federal elections law. The lawsuit from the watchdog group Common Cause Indiana accuses Connie Lawson of unlawfully purging voters from the state's rolls. Common Cause is challenging what's known as the cross-check system. It allows election officials to immediately remove people who are registered to vote in another state. The lawsuit says that system lets the state skip a step in the process, which violates the 1993 National Voting Registration Act.
The problem is that it's an oversimplification of that process, and it produces a whole bunch of false negatives. Probably most notably, this program kicked the former governor of Florida, Rick Scott, off his state's voting rolls. So it's very problematic. It's not something that you should rely on solely to do voter list maintenance.
The lawsuit is similar to one filed in August by the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. Lawson has declined interviews on the lawsuits, but she responded with an op-ed. She says the removal of names from the rolls is part of the regular maintenance of voter lists that's required by federal law. Lawson also accused what she called activist groups of suing to keep maintenance from being done. Up ahead, our political insiders are here discussing the major developments in the Russia investigation, tax reform, and the gun violence here in Indianapolis.
800 call Ken.
Welcome back. We're joined by Republican State Senator Jim Merritt, Democrat Phil Johnson, and retired Indy Star political reporter Mary Beth Schneider. Let's talk first of all about the indictments, some bombshell developments in the investigation into possible interference in the election. Do we see more fallout?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is just the beginning, maybe the end of the beginning, perhaps. We've seen the first indictments and the first guilty plea. That one is the one that no one really saw coming, and that's the one, I think, since he's a cooperating witness with Mueller, that could have, I think, long-term implications.
Yeah, I think the special prosecutor is following the facts where they may lead, and I think that's good. We've seen members of both political parties saying that they want to see this investigation go on. So I think that's where it needs to go. The special prosecutor's been clear that he is going to follow this investigation to wherever it goes.
Yeah, it's something new every day in Washington, D.C. And this indictment is something that's new, but it's old news now. And it's something else will happen next week, and this is not going away.
Do you think President Trump knows more than he is letting on to at this point?
I don't think we can say that. I think we ought to be careful about assuming what the president did or didn't do. People around him clearly were involved, I think, in some untoward activities, but we also know that Jeff Sessions, despite all his denials, did know about, but thank goodness he did say in this meeting, no, we aren't going there. We are not going to go have a meeting with Putin. So to know at this point what the president knew is really too early, I think. I'm
with Mary Beth. I think we just don't know, and that's why this is important. We've just got to see where this investigation takes it. I think that's a good thing. And
that's why you do have an investigation. You can't guess anymore. You never know what's actually going to happen, and I think everybody ought to watch Mueller and let him do his work.
I think one of the things that I'll be watching for on the end of last week, 3 Republican conservatives, including now I'm going to mess up the name, so I'm not going to do it, from a conservative from Texas, filed a resolution to have Mueller resign. I think if there's any move to take Mueller off the investigation, either by Congress or by the president, it will backfire big time.
Yeah, and every time the administrations ask about firing Mueller, it's an absolute no, and which is good to hear.
Yes. And that's true, and we've heard members of both parties saying that that was true as well. So.
Moving to tax reform, and we'll continue to watch that issue, certainly. What is in this latest proposal that could specifically benefit Hoosiers? Anything missing that you think should be in there?
I think we should start with the facts on tax reform. We've seen these kind of cuts before in Indiana, and unfortunately, Hoosiers' wages have grown very slowly, actually slower than the national average since these tax cuts were enacted. So I think first we've got to talk about the facts. And if this is about raising Hoosiers' wages, then in Indiana, we just haven't seen that. I think that's a good place to start.
Well, we do need to continue to work on wages growth in Indiana. And Mitch Daniels, when he left the governor's chair, one of the things he lamented that we weren't able to do that. I think the tax package is going to be something that's going to continue to evolve. We don't know exactly what's at the end of the road for this package. And in states like New York and New Jersey are not responding really well in regard to this reform package, and that's got to be watched itself.
That's because it takes away the ability to deduct your state and local taxes. It's a real mixed bag right now. There's some things in there that seem pretty good, but there are some things like, you know, eliminating some of the deductions that really do help middle-income people. And then some odd ones, like it takes away adoption assistance, the tax credit for people who adopt. That's been really important in encouraging adoption. State loan, student loans. So there are some things that I think that will be addressed, frankly. I can't see them going ahead with eliminating adoption assistance. So.
I think you're right. And I think since we're talking about Mitch Daniels, I'm old enough to remember when Mitch Daniels was talking about...
So young.
That's right. Was talking about the next red menace, ironic today, but the next red menace being the debt and federal deficit. And this looks like appears to add as much as $1.5 trillion to the federal deficit. So it's astounding how quickly the Republican Party has changed on that issue. So
they need a win.
They need a win, but we also have to cut. we have to cut, and there's got to be some responsible cuts, and I think this is going to continue to evolve. This is why transparency in Washington, D.C. is so important, and this president is so transparent. Everybody knows what he's thinking, and
for better or worse.
Yes, and he's the most
But
transparent
this process has not been that transparent so far in crafting this bill. Most of it's been done behind closed doors
in Congress.
Senator McCain's called for regular order. They need to go back to that, and people, I think, really do want to see bipartisan. So take some Democrat ideas, take Republican ideas, and I think you'll have a better.
There's no question about it.
Okay, we're going to continue to watch that discussion, just beginning here, but thank you all for being here. We are out of time.
I'm Erica Fly, and 6 in the City is in Anderson, surrounded by some unique conversation pieces created by one couple. This is 3 Rusty Nails. When Jim West buys something,
I automatically think, what can we do to tear that apart?
Hard work.
This is going to be a console table.
And creativity.
I'll put this in, and it'll have this Jeep look.
Pays off.
We get new customers every day.
I love it.
We found the Jack Daniel's Whiskey Barrel at a flea market, and we're like, okay, we've got to have that. That would make an awesome table.
Jim and his wife, Erin.
So we've taken a tractor grill. We just strung some LED lights in the headlights.
Have an eye for making the ordinary.
This is an old radio that we bought.
Extraordinary.
We re-cleaned it up, repainted it, and we actually turned it into a trash can.
Who sees this and says, I'm going to make it a trash container?
I don't know. I guess I did.
They buy from flea markets, auctions, estates, and build with reclaimed materials and old barn wood. In fact, Erin's first barn door project started it all. Did you know what you were doing?
No.
She perfected the craft. It became a passion. The couple opened the 3 Rusty Nails shop.
We repurposed about 60%. 40% we built. Even though I have Parkinson's, it keeps me busy.
He says doing the work he loves helps his condition.
This actually keeps me moving, keeps my body moving, and I enjoy that.
From unique tables.
This is an old pocket door from a home that was built in 1890.
To unusual bar carts.
We put a piece of bowling alley on the top.
And what do you do with this?
It's a ski chair.
You find that unique piece, and then you build the rest of your decor around that piece.
You look forward to something different every day. That's the fun thing about it.
Making it easier to carry a gun. A panel recommends the General Assembly remove hurdles seen by some as restricting the ability for law-abiding citizens to get a permit to carry. The committee says the hurdles include the cost of the permit and limited access to required fingerprinting during the application process. The group Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America expressed its concern that lawmakers would recommend people be allowed to carry in public without a license. It's a hot-button issue that could impact anyone who gets behind the wheel. We're talking about tolling, and we have new numbers on what it could cost you to hit the road in Indiana. INDOT released its feasibility study reviewing the interstates in central Indiana. The study finds tolling could bring in up to $53 billion in revenue between 2021 and 2050. Here are a few specifics. A trip from Indianapolis to Fort Wayne would cost you $4.20 in tolls. If you drive from the Circle City west to the Illinois state line, you'd pay $3.24 in tolls on I-70. Tolling is not a done deal, but one organization is already voicing its concern. The Alliance for Toll-Free Interstates is calling the study misleading and unrealistic. Join the conversation. Check out Indy This Week on Twitter and be sure to like the RTV6 Facebook page. Our Lauren Casey is in next with the 6 and what you need to know heading in.
.com/modernization.
Well, our big story today is going to be that possibility for some stronger storms, especially the second half of the day. It's really right over central Indiana, the bullseye for that enhanced risk for severe weather. What are we talking about with this threat? Well, the early part of the storm, as they get going mainly in the late morning and early afternoon, what we've been dealing with are some heavy downpours, but also some large hail could be possible as we get into the afternoon and evening. Also with the threat for severe weather comes the possibility for some gusty winds as that line sets up a little bit later in the event. event, maybe closer to 8 or 9 o'clock. We, of course, are going to see some heavy rain. An isolated tornado cannot be ruled out as these storms kind of roll on by, and because we're going to see heavy rain over the same locations, some flooding could be a concern here. Best threat is going to be sometime between 6 and 9 or so as that rolls on out, and then we get it out of here. There you see our forecast for a few flash flood watches. There they are. We're going to see that chance through the rest of this evening. After that, we cool things down into the weekend.
Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for the 6, so let's take a look at 6 things coming up this week in Indy. Let's jump into the holiday spirit. I know I'm ready. If you want to get a head start on your holiday shopping list, you can stop by the Christmas Gift and Hobby Show this week. It's at the State Fairgrounds Wednesday through Sunday, featuring more than 350 unique vendors. You can grow with Google and attend a digital job training event with the experts this weekend. Google is offering workshops on Friday and Saturday at the Indiana State Museum. It's all part of an initiative to advance economic opportunities across the country. This training will also feature more than 100 one-on-one coaching sessions. Well, if you feel comfortable enough, this is an experience you should try at Conner Prairie this weekend. Follow the North Star is an interactive journey allowing you to learn about the hardships of those escaped slaves traveling the Underground Railroad. It's intense, but it serves as a learning tool to teach about that time in our nation's history. Well, head on out to Lucas Oil Stadium this weekend to cheer on a number of local high school bands as they advance to compete in the Bands of America Grand National Finals. Nearly 100 bands from all across the country are coming here to compete, and we have a host of local schools getting in on the action on the field. We'll take a trip over to East Washington Street this Saturday at 10 a.m. for a unique tour. The Ford Plant Before tour shows off the 1914 Ford Motor Company assembly plant before it gets repurposed. Now, the site will be made new again into apartments, retail, and office spaces. And on Saturday, be sure to thank all of those who have served in your life. It is Veterans Day. Crew Car Wash is offering free washes to any vets and active duty service members at every location across our state on Saturday. That's what's on tap this week in Indy. Back to you.
Thanks, Lauren, and thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. From our entire team here, we hope you have a great week ahead.